Friendship is not a word that is easily described. In fact, those who know the true meaning of it are scarce. It usually comes with a bond of trust that is not easily broken. The question is, can you believe in that bond till the very end, no matter what? My name is Sophie. I'm 21 years old. I used to live with my parents and my two siblings, Lena and Brian. Dad's an architect. Mom's a doctor. But she had to leave her job to take care of Brian and Lena because they were young and still needed her care and attention. And for a long time, so did I. As a kid, my parents were always worried about me. I didn't have any friends at school, and I was very shy. I would immediately cry when something happened, but all that changed when I met my guardian angel, Matilda. The way we met was somewhat bizarre. I did pretty well in my studies at school. I had hobbies like art and music. Unfortunately, there was this one group of girls who liked to bully people like me. One day, in science class, I was carrying a project I was working on when those girls stopped me and tried to take my project. Just when I was about to cry and let them steal it from me, a girl appeared and told them to leave me alone, or else they would have to deal with her. When they saw her, they looked frightened and left in a hurry. I didn't know the girl, but when I turned to look at her, I saw that she was a tall brunette with a beautiful smile. She took my project and held it for me because I was shaking and sobbing. Then she walked me to class and told me she would be back during break to check on me. As she was leaving, she called back to me and shouted that her name was Matilda and said that she would see me later. She did indeed come back during break. The clique of bully girls left me alone after that and kept their distance from Matilda as well. I asked Matilda why they were so afraid of her. She laughed and said it was a long story, but the short version was that she beat them up once, and they became afraid of her and stayed clear ever since. I asked her how she knew that those girls were always bothering me. She said it was pure coincidence, that she had happened to be in the classroom the day they tried to take my project from me. She said that I looked so helpless that she decided to step in. I asked her to be my friend. She teared up a little and said, "Of course," and from that day forward, we became the best of friends. I was cheerful every day now, and we grew closer and closer together. The happiest days of my life. Her story was unusual. Her dad was a boxer. Her parents split up because her mom couldn't stand the thought of him risking his life boxing every day, so she left. Her dad did his best to look after Maddie and her two little sisters. Then, one day, he was killed by thieves who robbed him as he was coming home from work, leaving Maddie to raise her siblings alone. This heavy responsibility matured her and toughened her character. She taught me to be bold, to love adventures. I feared nothing with her there. I dealt with situations decisively, without hesitation. We were like two separate halves of a ship sailing in the dark that happened to find each other one night and came together to complete each other. This was how I met Maddie, and our friendship grew stronger year after year. Maddie and her sisters were like my own sisters. We were all one big happy family, until something happened that disturbed the fabric of our universe. I enrolled in the College of Engineering, while she enrolled in a different college. The first year of college was difficult for me, because I missed Maddie so much. But then I tried really hard and focused on my studies. In my third year, I met Matthew, a player on the college basketball team. During that time, I was working for the college newspaper, and I was assigned to interview him. He was smart, handsome, and had an inspiring story. His parents died when he was young, leaving him responsible for his younger brother, so he decided to work and earn money while pursuing his dream of being a basketball player. By the time we met, he had a chance to play in the NBA. We had a connection, and he proposed to me. I wanted to tell Maddie so badly, to share this wonderful news with her, but I couldn't. Maddie had completely disappeared that year, and I hadn't seen her at all. I didn't know where she was or how to reach her. Then, one day, I got a call from her. Her voice sounded distressed, maybe because her responsibilities were such a burden on her. Either way, I was glad she called. She seemed sad, and I asked her what I could do to help. I told her that I wanted to see her, so we could catch up. She agreed, and told me that we needed to get together soon. When we finally met, I saw that she had lost a lot of weight. I asked her why, and she replied that she was working while going to college. She wasn't looking after herself at all, but her eyes told another story. I told her about Matthew, and that we were getting married soon. She smiled, but her joy seemed affected somehow. I didn't know how to describe it. Perhaps it was the disconnected look in her eyes. I wanted to introduce her to Matthew, but apparently they had already met. They spoke politely to each other, but there seemed to be something between them that made us all feel uncomfortable. I didn't know what it was. A while later, Matthew was always nervous about something. He always seemed to be busy with training or games. But was that all there was? At the same time, Maddie had started acting weird as well. Something was going on between them, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Whenever her phone rang, Maddie wouldn't answer, or even look to see who was calling. Shortly before my wedding, Maddie had disappeared again without notice. Matthew went back to his normal self, and everything seemed to be fine. The wedding ceremony was going beautifully, until we got to the part where the preacher said, "Anyone who saw a reason why this marriage should not take place, may they speak now or forever hold their peace." Well, it turned out that there was someone who saw a reason why this marriage should not take place, and that someone did speak up. And much to my amazement, it was Maddie. She shouted that Matthew was her fiancé, and that he had deceived her and left her for me. Matthew looked at her with a perplexed look on his face, as if this was news to him. I felt like time had shifted into slow motion. I had to be dreaming. I couldn't imagine why neither of them told me this before. I looked at Maddie and asked if it was true. She said, "I'm done lying to you. I don't want to act anymore. Meeting you has been the most horrible thing that has ever happened to me. My life was going well till I met you. You got everything you wanted, even Matthew. He chose you instead." I was staring, lost for words. Tears started running down my face. "Please leave," I said quietly. Maddie was crying too, yet she smiled and walked away. I didn't understand her behavior. Why did she smile as she walked out of my life? Days later, the answer revealed itself. Matthew and I knew each other well, and what happened at the wedding did not affect us at all. Still, I could see it in Matthew's eyes. He had something to tell me, and one day, he came inside the house with tears in his eyes. I asked what was wrong, if his family was okay. He nodded and said, "They're all fine, Sophie, but there's something I've been wanting to tell you." During those times, when Maddie disappeared without warning, it was because she kept a secret from you. She had a terminal disease. She was dying. I was shocked. He continued and said that she had arranged the scene at the wedding to make me hate her, so that when she died, I wouldn't feel grief or sorrow, that she had loved me so much. Soon after our wedding day, her disease took a turn for the worst, and she died. I was still standing in shock. He gave me the letter she wrote me. "Dear Sophie, I'm sure that up to this point in time, you didn't understand my strange behavior, my sudden change. It was necessary to protect you from the shock of my death. I had no choice but to make you hate me. Don't be upset with me, dear Sophie. These are the last moments in my life, and I just wanted to tell you that I love you. Forever friends, Matilda." I cried like I never did before. I had lost my best friend. Dear Maddie, now I know the reason for your tearful smile when you left the wedding that day. You are still my one true friend. Not a moment has passed without thinking of you. Forgive me for not being there when you needed me most. You will always be in my heart. In legends and horror stories, ghosts are typically spirits of the dead, those who suffered greatly in their lives, that when their time comes, they choose to linger in this world, to sow hatred and chaos among the living. Do you believe this, that there are vengeful spirits living among us, right here, right now? I do, and my story will tell you why. I'm Martha. I'm 19 years old, and I have a twin sister, Caroline. She wasn't just my sister, but we were best friends and subsequent partners in crime. We suffered a miserable life because we lived in poverty. Our parents were very poor, despite belonging to a rich family. Grandpa, on my dad's side of the family, worked in the petroleum industry, where he made lots of investments and projects. And fortunately, he had a lot of enemies too. many of whom were from Mom's side of the family. Dad was the middle son, but he assumed responsibility for Grandpa's work because he was very competent and capable. Similarly, Mom became responsible for her father's work. She did her best to avoid conflict between her side of the family and Dad's side so that they could work together peacefully. It was at this point, I believe, that vengeful spirits must have come into play. My parents had loved each other since their childhood, but they didn't tell their families about it. In the past, both my grandpas were once friends and partners. They worked together within the same company, but they later became enemies and split the company into two. Both families hated each other that day forth. All of them, except for my parents. Mom's uncles took over her company and fired her. Dad couldn't bear to see Mom in this situation, so he told his dad that he was going to marry her. So his father made him choose between my mother and the company with all the power and wealth that came with it. To Grandpa's chagrin, Dad chose Mom over everything else. And so, they got married and lived together with Grandma. They faced life's problems without any support from anyone. Grandpa felt betrayed by Dad and disowned him. Then, Carolyn and I were born. Dad did his best to make us happy and give us everything we needed. Grandma told us about our family's history and how both our parents had been cut off from their families out of sheer greed and betrayal. It felt a bit unfair, but this was our life now. Then, one day, we heard Dad speaking on the phone, with Mom standing beside him, and they were both acting very nervous. He told her to take care of us, and then he left the house and never came back. Mom never told us where he went or why he left. Sometime after that, Grandma passed away. Our situation was getting worse. We thought we had to do something to help Mom. Maybe we were being influenced by those vengeful spirits I mentioned. But either way, Carolyn and I made our decision to go over to the dark side. We decided to steal, rob, defraud. We were smart enough. Together, we could definitely pull it off. We began with our neighbor, very wealthy, but very cheap. We figured she must be keeping her money somewhere in the house, since she didn't believe in leaving a dime in the bank's care and was completely convinced that they would steal her money. Lucky for us, I guess. And we were right. We infiltrated her house when she was away and found a load of money stashed away under a loose tile on the floor. Took some time to find, but we got it. When we got home, the house was completely deserted. Mom wasn't there. Her clothes were all gone from the wardrobe. We were on our own now. We began exploiting jewelry shop owners. We would pretend to be a wealthy customer and tell the owner that we wanted to take the jewelry home to show our mom and get her opinion. We would drug hotel owners and put all the money in their safe into a bag, then scream and call for help, saying that the owner had just collapsed, creating a diversion and disappearing in the crowd. We were getting quite good at it. Our wealth slowly grew day by day. Mom called, every now and then, to check that we were fine on our own. Of course, she knew nothing about our work, or what we were doing to survive. Our ultimate goal was to earn a lot of money and run away to another country to start a new life. One evening, I was with my friends, and I met a guy named Craig. He was rich, but somehow seemed different than all the people we robbed. Later I found out, to my surprise, that he was our cousin, the grandson of the man that had taken everything away from my mother and fired her. Unsure of what to do, I told Carolyn what I knew. She went ecstatic. She told me that this was our chance to take back everything, the company, the money that belonged to us. But for the first time, we didn't quite agree. Craig was nothing like his father. He wasn't greedy. He was kind and gentle. He often told me that money was a curse if it meant living alone away from people that we care about and cherish. I made up my mind, and I told Carolyn that I couldn't be a part of our evil scheming anymore, and I wanted out. And so I left her and went to live on my own. At this point, I had no idea what Carolyn was up to. In the meantime, Craig was negotiating a deal that would earn his company a lot of profit. He told me to come visit at the company, and then we would go out for dinner. I accepted happily. When I arrived at his company, I sensed someone behind me. Then, suddenly a hand pressed a handkerchief over my mouth, and I passed out. When I woke up, I found Craig unconscious beside me. To the side, I could see his safe was wide open. Papers were scattered everywhere, and in my hand was the key to the safe. Then the police arrived. found the safe key in my hand, and accused me of being a thief. I told them that I had been drugged unconscious, just like Craig. The police officer looked inside my bag and found a bottle of chloroform. I was shocked, to say the least. I couldn't understand what had happened. They took me downstairs and tried to wake up Craig. At about that time, a woman in a black wig came over to me and said, "Martha, you betrayed me." It was Carolyn. I couldn't believe that she framed me. Then she left. Her betrayal hurt me deeply. A part of my brain told me that I had betrayed her first, but that doesn't matter now. When I get out of prison, someday, I resolved to get my revenge on her. We were no longer sisters. Just as we had been betrayed by our families before us, we were now locked into yet another circle of family betrayal. Only it was more personal and closer to home this time. Were they truly vengeful spirits influencing us? I think so. What about you?